Here's an interesting project we're starting, an E91 M3 conversion. The customer's done all the body work and we're doing all the running gear. And the installation of the engine, the axles, the DCT gearbox. The customer's done a great job, all the paint and the body panels and 4-door wings, 4-door bonnet, rear wings grafted in, rear bumper, as you saw just now. And it's here for us to do the mechanical. So we've stripped the fuel tank and the rear axle out of the E91 M3 conversion now. That's where the fuel tank would sit, up in there. And there's the central floor sections going off into the tunnel and up in the engine bay. So this is how it's come in. Just, I forget what mileage was on this E91 chassis, but just normal sort of mud, dirt and grime from various years worth of usage. There's a few little areas of corrosion on the chassis that the customer naturally wants us to sort out before it all gets put back together. And down in the fuel tank area, down in the corner, that's quite a nasty one. And then the other side. I'm going to degrease all this first, get this mud off and assess the chassis correctly and mark up where the corrosion points are that we need to tackle. Like I said, this car's had the bodywork done already, so you can see the outer arches there, the M3 ones, where they've been blended and joined into this. Nice job. So, also got the common problem of these E8 and E9 brake pipes, where these new brake pipes, these metal ones, have got plastic coated over them, so the corrosion expands the plastic and makes it really tight against the unions, which mean they never turn and undo. So we'll have to put a new set of brake pipes on there, which the customer's already supplied. He knows about all these different changes for the E91, like the fuel tank as well, the fuel pipes. Some heat shields already on in place, so we'll take those back off and just, go and inspect these chassis brackets a little bit closer. If there's some that are corroded, there's no point putting anything back over all that corrosion. We'll also inspect this battery tray a lot closer, because we've done a few before where water gets into these battery trays, and where the pass-through cables are, the main starter cable and the accessory cable from the battery up to the front of the car. It's amazing how much corrosion happens all over that pass-through joint and can cause problems. That one looks like, that accessory cable looks like it's possibly got water in it and been corroding for a while, so we'll look at those and assess if they need repairing or replacing as well. And then moving up right up to the back end, up the rear chassis legs by the rear panel, quite a bit of corrosion in there, which we'll need to get those bolts out to remove that rear boot floor plastic tray. So moving up to the front end, the front axle complete, it's already been placed on, but nothing yet is tight. It's just all in place just to make the car roll. So that's how it's come in, and now we're going to assess what we need, like there's broken or snapped wiring and things like that. So we're just going to go and make a list and work out what's exactly needed in the engine bay before the engine goes in. Front end's all protected with low tack adhesive protection tape when we're leaning in the engine bay, and working out all the various fixing points and the new studs that need to be welded onto the strut towers and the locations of the gearbox oil cooler pipes. So then if we go into the other workshop, got an E90 M3 for reference, which is going to help us a lot on this project. So we can reference all the rear axle points and the chassis areas, like for instance the M3 fuel tank brackets, you go straight into the floor, whereas the E91 chassis supplied has got big drop down brackets, so we'll need to remove those on the E91 chassis. And again, the E91 chassis on the Tourings has got thick brackets spot welded to the rear substructure there, which acts for the drop down V-brace connection, but on an M3 axle it's a lot larger and they could be in the way, so we're going to remove those old brackets off of the E91 chassis, and this is helping us reference the carbon canister positioning behind the back bumper and left rear wheel arch. So this is going to be very helpful. So 4 brackets we can take off straight away. These are some drop down brackets spot welded onto the chassis for some sort of support bar. We've checked on the E90 and they're not on there, so they can come off. Another one less thing to clean up, and also less of a corrosion chap in the future. And then 2 more substantial brackets at the back, which are a bolt-on sort of V structure, which is where some form of V-brace would go on these Tourings. So again, they're not on there, so we'll take those off as well. So we're just working on the brake pipe solutions for the E91 M3. It's all different compared to the E91 chassis that's supplied. So we've had to order 1 brake pipe here, there's another one on back order coming from Germany, and also some of the brake pipe fixings here. Hi Richard, a couple of bits from BMW that we've ordered here. Rear axle bolts. BMW, these are the ones that BMW say one use only, probably because they come with Loctite on them, but we're just going to do them right and renew those. Some fixings for the brake pipes and fuel pipe clips, some self-locking nuts. Again, BMW seem to think that you need to use new nuts because they're locking ones every time, but we'll go along with that because we're trying to do an OEM build, obviously, for you. Some other fixing clips for fuel pipes and things like that. About £60 worth there. Unfortunately, they're not the cheapest things, the BMW fixings, but that's some of the bits that were needed this week. And there was 1 more brake pipe that came in to start the back ordered one from Germany, so that's being fitted now, shaped to fit across the bulkhead from the ABS pump to the join area up in the near side front wheel arch. There's a few more bits for the E91 M3 build. Centre slash rear prop tunnel heat shield, 2 side panels, the aerodynamic compressed fibre side panels. We need to mock those up to work out where the fixings and if any new studs need to be welded onto the floor. Couple of handbrake cables, couple of brake pipes there, an over axle brake pipe. I think they're both rear brake pipes actually, and then some O-rings for the DCT oil cooler pipes. More parts for the E91 M3, so there's the prop shaft, heat shield for the tunnel, and then a few more brackets and smaller things. So these 3 brackets up here are for the DCT gearbox cooler pipes, a bracket there for a pipe connection, pipe holder, another pipe holder bracket clamp, and then these here are for the air conditioning pipes. These 2 here, I think they sit down on the chassis legs, and that is like an insulation for where the aircon and cooler pipes go through the bulkhead. Some more genuine BMW parts for this E91 M3 build. We're going really OEM, trying to make this a real factory install. We've got some aircon pipe bolts and nuts there, along with some oil cooler, bolts and nuts there. The aircon H-valve and the 2 fixing bolts, and then the O-rings for that. Heater box fixing kit, and then some fuel pipes, brackets, clips there, and some power steering clips. So update on the E91 M3 conversion. The engine and box and front cradle, front subframe are now installed. The last time we got to all the brake pipe shaping work throughout the car, and now we've done a lot more with cooler pipes for the DCT gearbox, cooler through the chassis legs, and the fitment of those pipes. And we've got the DCT gearbox installed there with the rear cross member. Waiting for a donut to come in for the prop. Got the LCI M3 prop there, and then rear axle as well. So before these rear axles go in, and the front axle, we've been checking under tray and pipe fit ups, so that if we need to weld any studs onto the chassis, like we did to relocate all the brake pipes down the left hand side on this Touring model, that we can do so before we paint the floors. So for instance, that's a factory stud there for an under tray, and then certain central under trays have required different ones, so we've been then adding studs to the chassis in the correct locations before we paint the car, because once it's painted there's no way you want to be drilling into the floor or welding any studs to put some heat shields on that you forgot about. So we're doing a dry fit first, a full build of the entire car, and even including engine loom connection points so that we know any earth straps or wiring, like the battery, front to rear battery cable, which is different, making sure that's all clipped in properly. And then once we're happy with the full dry fit, then we can take all this apart again, which seems counterintuitive, but it's the only way to ensure a proper OEM finish. And then we can do our full paint throughout the vehicle underneath, and then do a refit to make sure that it's as fresh as possible. We've already tackled the corrosion points on the chassis and removed various brackets that aren't required on these models. And new brake pipes are out, every single brake pipe's brand new. Handbrake cables are new as well, and they've been ordered various BMW brackets there. There's an M3 specific bracket for the heat shield, which goes over the back end of the prop. And then just various little bits up in the engine bay, like aircon valves, and measuring up for oil cooler pipes and DCT pipes that run through up here. So there's another point up there where we're putting a threaded stud in to allow the DCT pipe bracket to fit on there, for the cooler pipe, sorry, to come down through there, link underneath the DCT gearbox, and then go into the oil pump on the side. So that's what it looks like partway through the dry fit, with the S65 sitting in there perfect, lots of room. It's obviously ultimately the same sort of chassis leg layout, even though it's an E91. Got some of the coolers down there fitted. And it's just the real little things. Surprising how many little small things are different, like there's no vacuum pump for the brake servo on the S65 as an electronic valve like the V10s, which sits down in the wing under here. So it's got a servo pipe that goes around the back of the engine, and then there's a different rain duct channel down here for the servo pipe to go through, and different little studs on this E91 chassis leg that are in the way of where the gearbox cooler pipes come down that have to be taken off, and various different mounting points for straps, and engine wiring loom connections that are slightly different on a touring model. All parts for the E91 M3, the centre gearbox, under tray and heat shield there. Then prop shaft fixing bolts for the CV joint into the diff and nut, and then prop shaft to the gearbox bolts. And also power steering reservoir self-locking nuts with the captive washers. More parts for the E91 M3 build. So we had to get a new diff rear cover. These are different between DCT and manual models. The one that was supplied, the used diff in this conversion, had broken fins, so naturally we're going to replace that for a brand new BMW cover. We've got another bolt, an important bolt for the aircon system down there, one of the other holders for the power steering pipes, some other nuts that we needed, and also another air conditioning holder. And some more bits arriving now. The fuel or carbon canister, what only looks like an exhaust output, the final output of those fuel vapours after they've been neutralised from the carbon canister. One prop shaft coupling specific to the S65 M3, and the sealant, the BMW recommended sealant for the diff rear cover to the diff body. E91 M3 delivery. Front bracket, the aluminium bracket that goes on the front cross member to hold all the cooling pipes as it travels, all the pipes travel across the engine bay at the bottom. Arrived from BMW in this wooden, almost crate-like box, nailed together, probably the most over-engineered box we've ever seen from them. Quite flimsy, but still a cardboard box would have been absolutely fine for that, but well done BMW. And then a couple of other fixings, water hose pipe clip there, and some of the bolts for this bracket and the pipes that connect through the bracket, and then a couple of BMW crimp clips for I think some other water pipes as well. 3 more bits that come in from BMW Germany after being back ordered for a while. We've got one of the pipes, pre-built pipes with a one-way valve in it for the brake servo vacuum line. This is the pipe that comes off the T-piece and heads over towards the engine inlet itself. One power steering rubber pipe clip or P-clip, and then one spacer for the engine oil cooler pipe clips as well. We're almost at the end of the drive fit run on the E91 M3 mechanical build now, waiting for the last thing to come in, which we've just fitted, which is the battery cable. Had to go for a genuine BMW battery cable. The non-M3s have 2. They have the main starter cable and then an accessory cable which comes out of that second hole, whereas on the M3s, or certainly the E90 M3 we've got for reference here, only has the single cable, so that's had to come from BMW. And now we're just part way through what we call the drive fit, so this is not the final fit, this is just making sure it all clips into its standard clipping points and that the factory studs fit already on the chassis, because this is obviously a non-M3 chassis, and if so, like now, they all correctly fit, then we can go forward with the next stage, which will be to remove the rest of the components and the fuel tank and the brake lines and start work on the body itself and carrying out the corrosion protection of the paint. This is the beauty of dry fit. We found one more stud that had to come off. This area up here, this stud was hitting either on the diff or probably the diff carrier actually, so that's just in process of being removed, belt sanded off, and then will be obviously painted before we go for the final paint finish underneath. Also, one more grommet was touching on the diff carrier again, so we need to come up with a solution for this, for that hole there. What else we've been working on? The fixings for the carbon canister, sort of, we call this the exhaust piece. E91 doesn't have the fixings on the chassis for the 2 clipping points, so we'll need to put those on, so that gets it out of the way. But apart from that, all the brake lines are done, all the way front to rear, routed correctly for the M3s where they go right down the outside next to the seals over here, whereas normal E91s go down through the centre section on the left hand side. So we're very close now, got all the correct BMW clipping points. We've ordered all these individual pieces after studying the catalogues and our E90 M3 company car, which is the reference car. Axle's been in and out many times, we're happy with that. Engine and gearbox have been in and out many times. Front end's looking good. Lots of routing for various aircon pipes, power steering pipes, DCT pipes, brake pipes for up in the engine bay, and the H-valve for the aircon unit. I'm getting all these brake pipes. These come straight from BMW and we haven't had a pattern to work from, so it's been a mammoth task to get these correct into the join positions on the left hand side. This is our front wheel arch, but we're there now. So yeah, the next stage is to carry out the paint and protection finish underneath the car. So the last thing to get on the chassis on the E91 M3 build is the rear exhaust hangers. These are the studs with the weld-on brackets that you buy from BMW if you don't want to buy a whole rear chassis leg section. So we're just going to get those lined up and welded on. So the exhaust stud hangers are welded on now in the correct location for the rear exhaust box, and so as they are on the other side, and that's what they look like with one hanger on. So the exhaust studs are welded on, and they've had etch primer and now a high build primer, so they blend in nicely with the rest of the floor before we carry out the paint process. And they're on the right hand side as well, and that's what it looks like with an exhaust mount mocked up, nice and factory, so you shouldn't really notice a great amount of difference once all the under trays and heat shields are on. So that's that side of the exhaust finished, just on the final few last little things. And then really trivial bit here, just marking up the locations for the carbon canister we'd call it the exhaust pipe really. This is the M3 one, which sits up in this near side rear wheel arch area, and there's a cutout in the wheel arch panel or arch liner, and then it goes off and sits underneath the left hand side of the boot floor. And these are the correct fixings. It doesn't come with these, so we've got these off another car, and we're just marking up exactly where it is, referencing the E90 M3, the company one that we've owned, just to make sure we get it in the right place. They don't have the studs on from factory, so we're going to put those on and make sure that's right. It's just, I'm sure other people wouldn't worry about it or wouldn't connect it or just chop it off at this end. There's only sort of an exhaust output, as we'd call that, for fuel vapour smells after they've been neutralised through the carbon canister, or cable tie it, but it's just not the way we do it. So we're just going to do it nice and OEM, make it original, and that's it really. We're nearly ready for spray now. Got the car masked up, so that we can just localise. I'm not doing the front end or the engine bay, just doing the underneath. So we will be painting next. So we've matched the OEM e-coat, or as best as possible, because each chassis or batch of vehicle over the months seems to be different from our research, but we've got a nice match there, proper automotive paint. So we're just going to start the paint process now. The car's fully masked now, and everything, even the sealer and the original e-coat, the smooth sort of e-coat finish, has had high build primer, which gives it a little bit of a keen or rough sort of finish. And then, as well as the internal of the car being vigorously masked, we've got Genuine BMW car covers, body shop car covers, and there's the touring shape you see, and that's fully masked, ready for the sealer and paint application. So here it is, first look, just after paint application. Odd lights here, but that is as close as we can get to the factory sort of e-coat / sealer coat. So we'll see what it looks like in the morning once it's dried, when it's got some natural light in it. So that's in a bit more natural light the next day once it's dried. That's the near side rear arch in the colour that we've closest matched to the e-coat, the factory sort of texture or colourings. And now we're going to try and make it OEM and pretend if the outside of the car was being painted on the production line by the robots, and the natural overspray from the body colour goes into the wheel arches and picks up the sort of high spots. So we're going to try that and shadow Jerez black, which is now the body colour for this E91 M3. And that's what we come up with, just a really light dusting, natural sort of flow. It lands where it lands, there's no rule to this because it is just overspray as per factory paint when the shell is painted on the factory line by the robots. So there it is with the Jerez black dusted in and a little bit of satin lacquer to seal it in. Also on the battery box as well, just trying to replicate a bit of the factory overspray from the robots when they paint the shells. Not to everybody's taste, but we are trying to make it original, and we have studied new cars and the amount of sort of overspray that we have, because we've done it before on other restorations and CSL restorations, and we've done a little bit on the sills as well, going inboard towards the centre just to replicate that factory overspray. So just do a walk round now and just show you the panel work and the paint work. Remember originally we had about 4 brackets, I think it was on this panel, to do with the old 325 E91 chassis that we didn't need and we cut off, which you'll see back in the previous videos, and a few studs that we've taken off. that haven't demasked yet. Gone into the tunnel as well. So we can start the build up next. We've got the engine bay masked up now, which is the final bit of the paint. Just where we've had to put some new studs in, or take some old 325 studs out of this chassis, just on the inner legs. So we just masked that up, and we're just going to dust a Jerez black into that and gradually blend that down into the tunnel. There it is, the S65, less than 10,000 miles on this donor example, purchased by the customer. Hopefully the last time we'll see this, as in it shouldn't need to come out again after many dry fits. There's the DCT gearbox, and that's about to be going into the E91 M3 build. So the engine bay's prepped up now, and we've got all the aircon pipes in correctly and the brake pipes. They were all straight originally, didn't have any pattern to make from. We just dusted some Jerez black into the chassis legs, just to clean those legs up either side of the picture, and a little bit down into the back of the bulkhead, which then just naturally finishes over the tunnel, and that's what that natural sort of overspray finish looks like. The refit's begun on the E91 M3 build. Nice new fresh undertrays underneath. We're getting another delivery of new fixings from BMW tomorrow, so we'll replace some of these. If there's any corroded ones we've had to use, we'll replace those. So we've got the carbon canister bracket in the top left of the corner. Both rear exhaust heat shields on. Fitting over the studs nicely that we retrofitted to the rear chassis legs. Fuel tank vapor pipe heading off up to the filler neck area. Plastic holder for the ABS and brake pad warning wire. Main battery leads on, brand new one from BMW. And the fuel tank vapor black pipe, all in the original clip-in points, so it's not going to rub on the chassis. No cable ties. You won't see a single cable tie on this build, certainly nothing that I'm aware of. All done with research and ordering all the correct genuine BMW parts to hold it in. So in an earlier video I'd made reference to that as the exhaust output for the carbon canister. It's actually the other way around, it's the input. Then we've got the brake pipes. These are the ones we had no patterns from because they're a different location on the M3. On the M3s they go down the chassis leg, sorry, on the seal on the outer part, whereas on the non-M3s they follow the fuel pipe rail down this more central part of the left hand side floors. So I think that's fuel return. I can't quite remember. But it's certainly fuel pipe in there. I haven't been involved in fitting that one, that's why I don't know off the top of my head. And that's the main vapour pipe that goes from the carbon canister up to the engine. And there's the one from the fuel tank where the fuel tank will sit, and that one will go out all the way over to the carbon canister in the corner. And the battery cable follows its way down the chassis into all the clip-in points. And the brake pipes are all in with the correct BMW fixings. Then we started to get some heat shields on in the tunnel. Got the main sound insulation. There's where the battery cable goes through. Up into the offside engine bay for the jumper point. Those pipes dangling through, that's the DCT cooler pipes. So once the DCT box is in, they will sit up into the cooler. And they go through the chassis leg, well not through, but on top of the chassis leg behind those heat shields, and over to the DCT cooler up in the offside front footwell. We've got other things in now, aircon pipes, expansion tank, water valve, and all the brake pipes. Wheel arch liners are in as well. They hide all the brake pipe joins, the OEM brake pipe joins. We haven't made anything, we've done the proper BMW joins. Just waiting for some front flexi hoses to arrive. Whoever supplied these had cut these, so they're no use. There's where the brake pipes come through the chassis and go up behind the near side front wheel arch liner. Fuel tanks fitted, along with the straps, and the M3 specific bracket here for the undertrays for the prop and heat shield, and the fuel filler neck and fuel vent pipe going up to the filler input. Rear axle is installed now, and we're just putting the diff into place. We had to change the rear cover because the rear cover had a crack on it, and that should complete the rear axle assembly shortly. It's starting to look a bit more like a vehicle now with the rear axle installed. And the wiring looms for the ABS and brake pad sensor clipped in. We've got the new, well, the replacement diff and cover in. So that's just surface corrosion on those discs, which we'll clean off for the first bit of usage. I believe the customer said the mileage on the axle was around about 1,000. It came from a stolen recovered 2011 E92, I believe. Fuel tanks in, and the handbrake carriers are in for the cables. So I need to finish bolting up the drive shaft to the diff. And that's a look at the fuel tank and the rear axle facing backwards. So the engine assembly is now in the car with the axle or subframe and the steering rack and the oil cooler pipes. Nice to see it in against the painted floor. Been in several times for drive fit, and then you can see the gearbox out there towards the back, and it's looking really good against the painted floor. So lots of wiring and pipe work to connect up now. Here's one of the last orders, just loads of fixings for the E91 build. Various grommets, 35mm, 20mm with the melted ring, 20mm, 25mm rubbers, 35s with the melted ring, 10mm plastic nuts for the undertrays, power steering tie rod, gator clips, Torx bolts for the V-brace, for the body, general self-tapping screws with for the underbody fixings, one spacing sleeve for a DCT pipe, and some more 10mm plastic nuts for the undertrays. This is the second from last parts order. A few small fixings, front brake flexi hoses, only one's here, one's arriving from BMW Germany, some front subframe fixing bolts, prop CV joint reinforcements, vent hose for the expansion tank because one of the end clips is missing, and then various amounts of new fixings and grommets. Looking more and more like a car every hour that goes past. We've got the front struts hung on the E91 M3 build, and surface corrosion on the discs, even though they've been dry stored. I think it was about 5 years ago these pieces were purchased for this project. So it's all fairly low mileage stuff. I'm not sure how low mileage the front end stuff. I know the back end was probably something like 1,000 miles, but the front end might be a little bit more old than that. So just going through and torque checking every joint and paint marking it after it's been torqued. So another one of the differences on the near side front suspension is the automatic headlight aim for the xenon headlights, and they have a sensor with a xenon potentiometer and control arm here that goes onto the front lower arm, and the wiring for it is slightly different. Non-M3s have a blocked off hole in the chassis with a little grommet up there, which we just simply remove, and that leaves a hole, and then we tape on a proper BMW cable holder, and that pushes in like that, and that's been using the E90 as our reference point, and that then comes down and sits here when the xenon potentiometer goes on. So I'm sure other people consider cable ties because it's quick and easy, but just liking to show how we like to do it all original, all factory, as we're using an E90 M3 for reference, and that's how it looks. There's the same cable coming down off of that cable clip, and then that's the xenon headlight level aim and potentiometer around the back. Fireworks now finished on the E91 M3 build. It's still a slightly incomplete car, but 95% mechanically complete. Still needs headlights. Exhaust system will be going on just before it goes shortly. Side skirt on the driver's side, and then various other trims like arch liners, pollen filter housings, and any of the smaller plastic pieces, but that's all fairly basic, straightforward stuff that the customer and owner would like to do himself, so that's no problem. We were just tasked with dealing with the heavy mechanical work and the brake pipes, the fuel pipes, the engine, DCT gearbox, front suspension, subframe, rear axle, all that sort of hard graft that needs workshop equipment and ramps. So that's it as we're handing it over. Jerez Black E91 M3 build, 95% mechanically complete. Not much left on it to carry out, apart from a lot of work inside the car, but customer's done an excellent job of carrying out the body work, or having that carried out, and the repaint. Still need to put the exhaust on, which we'll be doing shortly, just before it gets loaded onto the transporter. Skirt's on this side, so it gives you an idea what it looks like. And now we're handing it over to stage 3, we'd call this. So stage 1 was bodywork and paint, stage 2 was the mechanical underside, and then stage 3 the customer is getting involved with the wiring looms and all the modules and the coding and programming that's going to be required to get this S65 7-speed DCT up and running. And that is it, ready to go home. So it is a wolf in sheep's clothing, you might say. Still needs a bit of a drop, but the exhaust system and the interior should do that. The exhaust is going to go on shortly, but awesome, sleek sort of E91 shape with those rear arches. Very, very unique. There's only a couple of these custom builds in the country, and this one is looking particularly nice. That's the final order of parts for the E91. All the exhaust fixings, the rear olive clamps, the centre support bar, the rubbers for the rear box, various bolts and correct nuts, centre rubbers down here, all the BMW hardware, even the correct Torx bolts for the downpipe, everything genuine and correct to an OEM fashion. Final stage of the build, putting the exhaust system on, and we'd noticed that the exhaust system being supplied had some aftermarket flares welded back on, and they were the incorrect shape for the olive joint. So the customer managed to locate a brand new E90 M3 exhaust, which is going to look great on there. So that's what we're doing now, fitting up the exhaust system.
Schmeckst du auch was?